Rules for everyone. Questions, please indicate in the chat and I will call on you. All right, looks like we have one from, not sure what channel you're with, P. Mucinak.
Yeah, it's Patrick Mucinak, News 10 NBC.
Okay, go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Thanks for taking my questions. The first question I have, and it deals with movie theaters. Even before we were declared a yellow zone, our infection rate was below the 2% for movie theaters to operate. Now, obviously, we're over that 2% mark. We still haven't heard any clear answer yet if movie theaters are going to be forced to close again.
You're right. We have not heard either. We're at that 3% range right now. That's why we're declared yellow by the governor. We have not heard any more on movie theaters, but we expect to have an update soon. It could be as early as later today. We just have not heard yet. Just to be clear, the control room, we don't make decisions here. We certainly pass along the information and data. We await, the decision by the governor's team and the health department in terms of what they're going to do. Movie theaters have been discussed so far, but there's been no decision as of right now at 1 o'clock.
My other question is, it deals with enforcement. I know we've talked about this numerous times over. The governor has demanded local governments to do more enforcement, saying that we're past the point of education. Now it's time for enforcement. But what about here in Monroe County, the Monroe County area? Are we finally looking into enforcement? Did we wait too long to get serious with this form of compliance?
No, actually, there's been quite a bit of enforcement. I would say the premier leader in this region, two leaders that have been standing out have really been County Executive Adam Bello and Dr. Mike Mendoza, who have been sounding a clarion call almost every day on these issues. There has been enforcement. There's been state liquor authority enforcement, local officials, and I'll speak to being on a control room. We have all 9 counties are represented. We have either the town supervisors or Jack Marin from Victor is leads all the board of supervisors. They have been very good. What we look for is compliance before we add to more of an economic loss. A lot of these folks at the local level, be it the county, town, village, they'll visit an establishment and basically tell them, please, we've had a complaint. They may document it. There has been some actual enforcement where people have lost their licenses or their liquor licenses. Those things have happened. But for the most part, what I understand is when people are contacted or there's a visit there, for the most part, they stop doing it. That said, right now, I do think, given the situation we're in, we're going to up the ante there. You'll see that happen probably across the board. But I want to make a point here. Dr. Mendoza has been very good about articulating this. The key areas for spread have been sometimes bars and restaurants in close proximity, a lot of parties in people's homes. No one in a 9-county region is going to be knocking on a door and going into somebody's house and telling their guests they have to leave. But some of these events, some of these parties, Halloween parties, birthday parties, anniversary parties, Thanksgiving and holiday season coming up, it really is a ripe season to see even more of a spread. So we try to consistently put a message out to people on social media, in the media, over and over again. And I do believe the voluntary compliance has been very strong. The challenge now is with the change of weather, maybe some sports teams on college campuses, the 18 to 22 or 23 range has been probably the largest age range right now. And I have to add, I've gone by the new skate park, which I love, and I give the governor great kudos because the governor's money put over the top, and that's a great addition. But I've gone by the last 2 nights. That place is packed with young people, probably in the same age range we're talking. And I will tell you, I did not see one mask. And I think we have to be very, very careful that it's those kinds of gatherings that nobody means to be a spreader. It's young people, it's gatherings, it's parties. It's not intentional, but you get that many people in close proximity. I do think you open up the opportunity to see these spreads continue. We're at yellow. We do not want to go to orange or beyond. So we're trying to take every step right now. I also want to clarify with the issues of enforcement. We're on calls, the control room every week, at least once or twice. I'm on calls with the hospital systems and the healthcare systems here, at least once, if not twice a week. And also, County Executive Bello had a call yesterday with different government officials, which he does routinely, calling people together. So there has been really a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of coordination with the governor's office and the state. But right now, I think the biggest opportunity to slow this down are not just at the public businesses, but they're in people's homes and these private gatherings.
Bob, can I ask one more question? Okay, I hate to monopolize it, but if restaurants aren't the problem here, then why impose more restrictions on them versus enforcing what's in place? Why can't the zone restrictions be customized per region based on the source of the spread?
I'm not saying they're not the problem, because anytime you're having a situation where people are talking, eating, drinking in close proximity inside, you provide that opportunity. I think the governor's regulations and the changes are pretty much to limit the people per table, limit the occupancy, not to close them down, but just to make sure people are extra careful in terms of how close they are with people. And on a personal level, my family's very concerned about being just with our family. We don't go outside at all. We've been pretty much quarantining ourselves. I say no to invitations constantly, just at people's homes. But the bars and restaurants, yes. You have football parties, Bills gatherings, you name it. They are still an issue. But I was saying earlier, I think one of the big issues we've seen are also these private house gatherings, parties in close proximity. And one reason, I'm not a scientist, but in the summer, we're outside more. You're in the fresh air now, with the exception of the last few days, of course. It's been getting much colder. People are inside. Heat is on. And Dr. Mendoza has been so good explaining the medical aspects of this spread, the droplets when you're in close proximity. And I think it's just a collection of things we have to be super, super careful with about spreading this disease. And people have been great following the rules. There are some exceptions, but I hate to see this thing politicized, which unfortunately it has been. It has nothing to do with freedom. It has nothing to do with anything but personal responsibility and public health. And we do not want to shut down. I can assure you the governor does not want to shut down the economy. Again, he was forced to do it earlier. We do not want to go back there. And I do feel if people just comply, wear a mask, stay socially distanced, go through the disinfecting, the hand sanitizing, be super careful, avoid these gatherings, we're going to turn this yellow back to where we were before. And let's keep in mind, the Finger Lakes region has been the first region to open through every single phase. People have been great. They follow the rules. I see people every day. I was going to get my car today. I'm actually in a rural area for a while. I see two people out. They're in a field today. They're both wearing masks. I saw a couple sitting in a yard about 20 feet apart in chairs talking, wearing masks. People are following the rules. They are. They're really trying to adhere to it, but we have to be extra careful. And I think especially appeal to young people. And I can go back to, coming out of high school, college and beyond. You think you're invincible. You do. I wear a mask now. Can I tell you in all honesty, if I was 18 or 19 years old, would I be as diligent? I don't want to say that because I was a different person back then. You're young. You want to go out and have a good time. But when they understand that they could be spreaders to their family, themselves, this virus really does not discriminate at all relative to age or anything. And so we just want to make sure that we just keep reinforcing to people and look at these opportunities where you have these gatherings and no masks. And I think if we just stop those and reduce those, we'll get out of this yellow category and back to normal.
Thanks, Patrick. We'll go to Jane from 13 for the next.
Hi, I have a question. If our zone moves to orange, what would you say to those businesses like salons and gyms that might have to close down all over again?
Well, the first thing I would say is we don't want to go to orange. And if people really follow the rules, we're not going to get there. And I think one of the appeals we're trying to make right now is if you are irresponsible with the guidelines we just mentioned, you're going to impact your family, your neighbors, these businesses that you love, because we don't want them to close. And so I think that's the part we wanted before we get to that point. I don't want to envision ourselves going to orange yet. I want to make sure we get out of yellow and go backwards. But if we follow the rules, follow the guidelines, we will get there. If we don't, then quite frankly, we're going to see ourselves moving along and getting into orange. And God forbid, red is going back to last March, April, and May, where we had a total shutdown. I can tell you as a head of the Chamber of Commerce here in Rochester, businesses could not even begin to sustain themselves with a second shutdown. I talked to a major restaurant in Rochester. They are very heavily capitalized. The owner said if it shuts down a second time, they cannot stay open. They're going to go under. And my feeling is if they would go under, there's probably a whole lot more smaller businesses that maybe don't have the capital that these folks have that will go under long before them. So it really comes down to just being disciplined, being diligent with these rules and trying to avoid that. Because you're right, if we go to orange, there's going to be more closures, and God forbid red. Red is a total shutdown. And these decisions are made by the governor. He will make those decisions. Our job locally is to make sure we get out of this yellow category now and take a step back. And I'm confident we can if we just pay attention to the details, follow the fundamentals, don't politicize it, don't push the envelope. And I think if we do those things, we're going to get out of it and get back.
Do you think our local economy could survive if we get into orange or red?
Well, I would say key word is survive. The local economy will certainly survive to some degree, but a large chunk of that economy may not, especially smaller businesses. And you look at, I'll give you an example, our chamber. We have business lines in the chamber. We had to lay off and cut jobs. 1/3 of our workforce is gone. Why? Because customers were gone. And we are no different than restaurants and salons and health clubs and fitness centers that have had to either curtail the hours, lay off people, and go under. And we don't want to go back and revisit that. So the economy, listen, we're always going to, in totality, survive, but we don't want to see those that aren't as strong not surviving. So as a Chamber of Commerce, I think 95% of our members are small businesses. They're not the big companies, they're small businesses. We can't afford to lose any one of them. They create jobs, they create really the strength of our local economy. And when you look at the past few months, some areas did pretty well. Certainly some of the big box stores, grocery stores, equipment, those types of things. But restaurants, salons, obviously movie theaters, the malls, a lot of the malls have lost tenants. Retail is taking a huge hit, and not just in New York State or Monroe County or Rochester, but across the country. And we really can't afford another one. But it goes back to our own personal habits. I do think we can control a chunk of this virus, maybe not all of it, but just following the steps that we probably said ad nauseum, we can control it to a degree and keep it from going from yellow to orange or orange to red.
Thank you.
Next question will go to Kayla at News 8.
Hi, good afternoon. So some of the restaurants that I've talked to today are just expressing concern about having to tell people that, the no more than 4 people at a table rule. They're saying, what if a family of 5 comes in? And obviously, they'll comply because they have to. But I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about the reasoning behind that, just for people to know.
On a personal level, I don't know the entire rationale. I would defer. It's probably coming from experts in the health department. Knowing the governor as I do, he doesn't make these decisions in a vacuum. I'm sure Dr. Zucker and Dr. Zucker's team and other experts they consult with have probably made these recommendations. But I understand the frustration with restaurants. They have been hit very, very hard. And, a family of 5 may choose not to go out at all, let alone go and be separated in a restaurant, which would impact certainly the customer base. So I get that, but I think the same thing applies even in families. Think of Thanksgiving coming up. I do believe a lot of families are already making adjustments in their plans. They have relatives over. I said earlier, I've said no to parties and gatherings. I'm involved in a number of these different organizations that get together. I choose not to go. I'm in the office right now, but our office is pretty much remote. There's probably 3 or 4 of us in today. The rest of our team works remotely. So, we're going through these adjustments so we do not lose more people. But for the restaurants, I'm going to go back and say, we want to keep these restaurants alive and keep them moving. Let's get out of yellow. Let's reverse this and get back. And I think we can do it. There's not going to be another ranking or assessment probably before Thanksgiving. So this category will probably go through November, which I think 3 weeks from yesterday or 3 weeks from today may be December 1st. So you figure 2 or 3 weeks will be in this category, but our hope is that we just keep pounding away at the messaging and get out of it and go back to where we were before. And at least increase that capacity that restaurants have had to enjoy somewhat over the last several weeks.
And just as a follow-up, they've also been telling me, some owners that it's been tough already with enforcing masking and distancing, constantly having to remind people. And they say that this new seating requirement is probably going to add a layer to that. So I guess, what would you say to people who are maybe taking out some of their frustration on these restaurant owners?
Well, first of all, to the restaurant owners and any business owner, I've recommended this. Do not get into a confrontation over mask. It is not worth getting into a fight or far worse, an altercation where somebody is seriously hurt. We've seen it around the country where fights have broken out. You just have to let it go at some point. Do the very best you can. I think the businesses that get in trouble are those that don't enforce anything. A business owner could refuse to serve if they wanted to. They could do it. But I think sometimes people walk out, they forget them. They could be given a reminder. I've gone to stores where you walk in, somebody's outside with mask, handing them out if you happen to forget one. There's ways to do it without being confrontational. But I'm going to go back to the issue of curtailing the number of people, 4 to a table, curtailing the hours. As you know, bars are open till 2 o'clock in the morning in our area. They're now closing it at at midnight. So that will certainly curtail some business. But I would just say, keep following the guidelines, hang in there. Our goal is to get out of this. We're hitting pretty much a terrible time for the pandemic. And not just here, but you see around the country and around the globe. Spain and Italy both have seen huge increases. I read a lot of the national news outlets in the morning, and so it's not just here. But again, the Finger Lakes region has been so good in terms of the steps it has taken. This 9-county area has pretty much followed the rules. Let's just stay on point with that. Let's not get COVID fatigue and let down. Let's not argue it and fight it. Let's just go back. I just feel it's a time for discipline and for fundamentals, and we'll get through this.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to April from WXXI News.
Hi, good. Hold on.
Can't hear you, April.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yep.
Sorry. Good afternoon.
Hi.
You mentioned that so if we do go into the red zone, that some businesses may not be able to survive. We live in a area where we have very long winters. What are you anticipating? Say we don't go into the red zone very soon, but during the winter time when people are pretty much indoors, what are you anticipating for a lot of local businesses?
I think it does impact these gatherings, restaurants, bars, parties. I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan, so I'm sure every week there's a party or gathering at a restaurant, a bar, somebody's house. In the wintertime, it's going to be challenging because it's going to be cold weather. People are inside, heated, close proximity. So I do think it does present a challenge. It really does. And the hope is we get out of this fairly soon because, you got to figure this break of weather right now is not going to last. It won't be in the mid-70s for very long. We're going to start seeing cold weather, and we'll have a long stretch right through March and April. So yes, it is a big, big challenge. And again, even with the capacity of the seatings, restaurants are impacted. A lot of restaurants, their whole economic success really depends on filling those seats, those tables. It sometimes and often is a very tough business to be successful in. And they have to do that year round. So there's no doubt these guidelines present a challenge for them. But I would make a general appeal to everybody. If you want to support these restaurants, go back, please follow these guidelines. Number two, if you don't feel comfortable eating, then takeout. I mean, I've lived on takeout the last several months. I'm married to a great cook, but we try and support restaurants. We try and call and do takeout. It doesn't help a lot, but it helps a little bit just to keep that going. So I think those types of things just remind everybody to follow the rules, because if we don't, we're going to see us move from yellow to orange. Yellow it's a mild first step. It impacts some businesses more than others. Orange, a little more stringent, and red is where we were back in March and April. That's a shutdown, and for really all non-essential businesses. And we just can't afford to go there. We don't want to go there. And, put it in many terms, if you want to prevent traffic accidents, you go the speed limit, you stop at stop signs and traffic lights, and you drive carefully. You want to prevent the spread of the COVID virus, you follow the same guidelines. You wash your hands, you wear a mask, you stay apart. It really is following the things that people like Dr. Mendoza and Dr. Fauci and others have said for months, and they're absolutely right. And those that contest it, ridicule it, I think they do a great disservice. And for people that are out there, sometimes they have public shows and opportunities to maybe for the sake of being adversarial, take an opposite view. If you are sowing the seeds that these things don't work, I think you're being foolish. They do work. Is it 100% certain? No, it's not. Nothing is. But I do think it helps. I will tell you at a personal level, I've had my flu shot from Dr. Mendoza, but I have been healthy, get my temperature taken almost every day, 96.7 almost every single day. But I, in my past careers, have often caught colds, flus, sinus infections every year. Why? Because you're around people, shaking hands, hugging, kissing, parties, events. In a public life, you're out all the time. This year, I would say, being somewhat self-quarantined going back to March, have stayed pretty healthy. And so our family pretty much stays together. I don't travel. I stay right here. I have no intention of traveling. I've not eaten I think I've eaten once in a restaurant since April. And we're just trying to follow the rules that we can right now and get out of it. And we will. We're going to see the end of this. We just have to hang in there. That's why I mentioned before the skate park. My warning is just these young people, just be careful. Enjoy that. It's a great park. It's a great asset. But wear a mask. Be careful, because that's those types of events where people are just having fun, exercising, close proximity. It's not like a big open field. They're pretty much in close proximity. Those can be potential super spreader events, which we want to avoid.
I also have another question. A lot of things that you suggest and a lot of things that are being recommended, people pretty much have to self-govern themselves as far as taking the right precautions to not spread the virus. In your opinion, do you feel that if people are not following these guidelines, like you mentioned the skate park, there's a lot of people there, should there be some kind of enforcement to make sure that people are not spreading the virus?
I always believe the first step is communication and prevention. So they might not think of it, but maybe we hand out masks at the entrance, everybody going in. And hey, enjoy yourself, wear a mask. Right now, I would say most gyms and fitness centers, all of them in operation, probably would require a mask. Everywhere I go, big signs on the doors, you do not go in. Dry cleaners, food, takeout, drugstores, you wear a mask. I think your point, April, is right on target. People have been good. People have followed the rules. I mean, you look at our entire country, it's voluntary compliance. People voluntarily follow most laws and rules. That's why it's not chaotic. So I think that's what we're trying to keep reinforcing, is just follow these rules. If somebody persists, if somebody forgets, remind them. I just believe enforcement is the last level. But I do think if somebody is basically defying everything, saying, I'm not going to do it, well, then I think that's a different category. If you're a restaurant owner and you're like, hey, you're not allowed in without a mask, with a mask on, you want to basically defy the orders, then I think you bring on the enforcement that you really maybe want to avoid. But people make mistakes, people forget, and I just think that the more people would voluntarily do it, be encouraged to do it. As I said earlier, I don't believe anyone, I don't care where you are, should stop somebody and get into a physical confrontation about wearing a mask. It is not worth it. We've seen some lives lost, and I wouldn't recommend that for anybody. And I don't think any business should be penalized for not physically obstructing somebody walking in because they did not wear a mask. I think that defeats the purpose, because I don't want to see anybody get hurt. But I do think that overall, and I found us in the Finger Lakes region, people have been great. City, suburbs, rural, people are following the rules, and I think that's a commendable step. It's just right now, you look at some of the patterns, it's not schools. Our elementary and secondary schools have been terrific so far. It's college campuses, it's gatherings, it's at 18 to 25 range that has the biggest spike. it's young people, and I get it. I mean, they're young, they want to have fun, they feel invincible. We just want to make sure that they have fun, but just do it safely.
Great. We'll go to David Andriotta with Citi.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for taking my question. So I actually have sort of a two-parter here. I don't know if the Chamber has any youth sports organizations, nonprofit youth sports organizations among its members, but I'm sure that the Chamber is probably familiar with what an economic driver that youth sports can be. They bring in a lot of tourism dollars. And I'm just wondering, the first part of the question is whether the Chamber has had any conversations with youth sports organizations or the Monroe County Sports Commission, which sponsors a lot of these types of events and promotes them, to discuss the effect that the pandemic has had on youth sports. I mean, as it stands right now, the state has recommendations for high risk, low risk, medium risk sports. So we're not seeing a lot of or any really of these type of tournaments going on in Rochester or Monroe County. But nevertheless, sports teams are continuing to play. And I know this as a parent of two young hockey players. So has the Chamber had any conversations with youth sports organizations or the Sports Commission about the effect that the pandemic has had on youth sports?
Dave, we've had, that's a great question. We've had countless conversations going back to last spring, summer, and fall. It is, you're right on point. It is a huge economic driver in this region. It is also, having played sports my whole life, it's a big thing for kids to play. You know, I could not imagine not playing basketball in a basketball season. I could not imagine, or having it cut in high school or college. I couldn't imagine not being able to play Little League when I was young because it was canceled. And we've had travel teams. We really tried to, as best we can, do two things: pass on the concerns of these organizations to the governor's team, because they're social and economic impacts. We understand that. And then also interpret the rules as best we can with travel. There's been a lot of restrictions in terms of what you can and can't do. And sometimes those rules change and they get updated. And we try to do the very best we can to communicate that back and forth. And I'll give you an example of some of the suburban little leagues. They were like apoplectic. It was into the summer. They wanted to start, and they were so good. They had taken all the precautions. They were ecstatic when they could start playing again. But I just think that it is a huge part of the fabric of our community. And I'll take it one step further. I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan. Watching the Buffalo Bills play with no fans in the stands, although they're 7-2, which is great, it's not the same, because it's such a big part of families going and fans. It's just part of us. And it's had a huge social impact as well as economic. I know that the Sports Commission here, Visit Rochester, we're all on email blasts together and sometimes calls together. I'm hoping we can get back on track by next year. I know Visit Rochester has already landed some NCAA tournaments in the future here, which are big drivers. I think in 3 years we have the PGA here. That brings millions and millions to this region. And I certainly hope we're not in the same situation by that time. But yes, to your question, on both ends, fielding concerns and also giving updates and trying to interpret the rules.
So the second part thank you for that. The second part of the question then is do you foresee, and this is more of an enforcement question, do you foresee the county stepping up enforcement on youth sports organizations? Many are traveling. I mean, they're not traveling within the state. They're typically traveling over state lines, and particularly to the contiguous states where the governor has said, those travel restrictions don't apply to residents of those contiguous states. And, what has happened is that youth sports teams are finding a loophole in that and playing their games, in Erie, Pennsylvania, or Scranton, or wherever else over state lines. Do you see that as a problem? Should something be enforced? What's your response to that?
I think the issue, the most important thing, is not so much enforcement, is enforcing the testing policies and the quarantining policies, if they do that. Youth sports, as you probably know better than anybody, so much of it is volunteers, parents volunteering as coaches. It would be be absolutely wrong to fine them and to have an economic impact, but just make sure if they do travel, if they hopefully they follow the guidelines, but if they don't, there should be a mechanism where they check in and they go through a testing and potentially a quarantine period if need be. I think that would be a fair assessment. You mentioned Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing in Erie, but I know a big part of Erie's economy is the youth travel teams, probably almost all seasons down there. They made a huge part of their local economy out of hosting those tournaments. But I'm not aware of any enforcement. I know that Dr. Mendoza and County Executive Bello have been great in terms of reinforcing this with people. I think our bandwidth has been terrific, but I think a lot of it comes down to just making sure if a team goes out of state and hit, like all travel restrictions now, have a positive test, or if you come back into the state, you're quarantined. We had to field questions. We had a friend of ours who was in Colorado, could not get a test, was able to, I think, got one the last day, but the results weren't in, was going to quarantine here until the results came in. So I think a lot of it is just making sure you follow the rules when you come back to make sure you're safe. But I've heard no talk about, a sanction against a youth sports team as of now. And I would sense if it got to a point where it was serious, if there was a spread, I would think the county and the state would, or maybe several counties, would reach out to whoever the organizing authority is for that league and seek their cooperation to either curtail or make sure the rules were followed.
Okay. Thanks, Bob.
Great. That's all the questions that we've received. So thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, just to let you guys know, we have, might be some more updates later. We're on calls every day on this. So as we get updates, Shan can get those out. Usually comes from us, Vinny Esposito, the county executive, or Dr. Mendoza for the most part. We have a control room call later today, so we just update all the counties. And I just want to say in this era of political discord and discourse, the Finger Lakes region is made up of areas that are governed by people of both parties. And what I've seen going back to April and May is just tremendous teamwork with the whole 9-county region here. People get it. We get the impacts. We maybe to just generally hit on before. Everybody wants to reinforce the rules. Nobody wants to add more of an economic pain to any business or family by having the type of enforcement that really hits them in the pocketbook, but just getting that voluntary compliance, just getting people to just follow the rules. And the leadership in these 9 counties have been terrific. A lot of them personally have gone out to businesses. I know Jack Marin just sent a letter out to, Ontario County and some other counties, just reinforcing these steps to take. So the leadership there has been very, very good. And again, we don't make rules. The control room is not, we don't close things down. We have no authority to close, no authority to implement rules. We interpret, and the most important thing we could do is communicate back to the governor's team the impact and the issues, and make sure that the people here get the rules interpreted and get the most up-to-date information. That's pretty much been our role. I would describe this group as a conduit, but we have no enforcement authority whatsoever. I think people misinterpret that. We don't. But we take a lot of emails and calls every day and week and try to do the very best we can to get an answer for somebody or to make sure we communicate some of the impacts back to the governor's team so they realize when a decision is made, these are some of the things that are impacted.
Great. Thanks everyone so much.
Have a great day, guys. Stay healthy.